After COVID hits, stock market crashed for the first half of 2020, but rebounded for almost 2 years to all-time high, only to see the early sign of bearish market at the start of 2022 this year. And Bitcoin has been bearish ever since 2021. Investors lost faith in digital assets. The tiny corner is Singapore property, which miraculously skyrocketed ever since COVID-19 and is still at an all-time high, which begs the question, will Singapore property prices drop next year? And if so, should I wait until next year to buy? Today's Society of Home is going to dive deep down into the data and discuss some of the factors which might determine the possibility of a housing bubble burst. But before we dive into the video, I want to share with you my recent visit to the URA Exhibition. Today we're going to URA. So over here in the URA Center, you are able to find various stations that showcases the thoughts that were put into drawing out the long-term plan for Singapore's landscape. You will also be guided by a tour guide if you manage to book online beforehand, and he'll be able to explain more to you on what the exhibition is about and what the URA has in store for Singapore in the next 40 to 50 years. So the admission to the Singapore City Gallery at the URA Center is free. You can go on Monday to Saturday, 9 AM to 5 PM. You need to make a booking for groups more than 20 people. I'll leave the information down below in the description. So over there, it showcases Singapore's transformation over the last 50 years, and it also talks about Singapore's long-term plan in the next 40 to 50 years. And in every station, you'll be able to find this QR code which you can scan and let you input your ideas and feedbacks. And URA will read through them and probably incorporate your ideas into the long-term planning. Now let's head back and talk about the property prices. Before we start the video, just to put out a disclaimer that this video is made in July and these are just my opinions and I shall not be responsible for any loss of money in time to come, especially for DIY consumers, as there is never a one-size-fits-all strategy. With that aside, let's dive into the video. Okay, so this is a chart of the property price index of the past 2 decades, spanning from 2002 to 2022. So as you can see, during the SARS period, the property price index remained stagnant for the longest time. Singapore houses growth started from 2007 onwards until an all-time high around the end of 2007 to the early 2008, where the global financial crisis took place, resulting in a full 4 quarters of price correction until 2009, but still remained higher than before 2007's rise 2 years prior. So at the end of 2009, property prices see a rebound because of lack of supply and a drop in interest rates, rising to an all-time high over 17 quarters, or about 4 years before the series of cooling measures took place. So from 2017 to the end of 2019, of about 8 quarters, the property price index climbed slowly year on year, despite various cooling measures in 2018. And then COVID-19 sees a rise in the property demand from 2020 onwards until today, which continue to soar. So knowing that rich people will always get richer and that the government will never allow our property market to so-called crash, like what happened in China, so we can safely assume that there will be a price correction in time to come, but it will not happen so soon. And also from this chart, we can see a general uptrend of the property prices. So there are actually various factors that contribute to the general uptrend of property prices. Comment down below if you'd like me to make a video about it. So right now we're at the peak, or so we think. Based on historical movement, the property prices in 2023 high chance will only go 2 ways. Either it will maintain at this level and go sideways, or it will go upwards further. Though we can see a gradual drop in resale transactions for HDB, however that didn't deter people from
paying higher premiums for larger units. So there are actually two factors that will determine how property prices in 2023 will look like.
So the two factors that will determine the prices in 2023 are: number one, supply and demand.
Okay, so for HDB, there are an estimated of about 15,483 units hitting the resale market next year upon reaching MOP. And in contrast, there were about 31,000 units that hit MOP this year and about 25,000 units the previous year. The Minister for National Development also said in December 2021 that up to 23,000 of BTO units will be launched next year, which is a 35% rise from 17,100 units in 2021. So while there are a slight increase in the BTO launches, the newer HDB flats hitting the market sees a sharp drop in supply. As for private properties and executive condos, according to URA, there were a total of 15,805 private property units and 1,701 executive condo stock left in the pipeline. That makes a total supply of 17,506 units in the last quarter. In contrast, typically I would say 20,000 units in the supply pipeline will be a healthy amount to prevent the situation of demand over supply or a shortage of units, which crazily drives up the prices, and we are actually currently observing this in the recent trends. So as you can see in this chart, where the supply reduces drastically over time and we're unable to keep up with the demand of consumers who wants more personal space immediately. This year, now that half the year has gone, there were only a total of 3,185 units launched, surprisingly much lower in the past 5 years. So just comparing private property alone, you're able to tell that new launches slowed down due to many reasons: the land prices, the manpower shortage, the cooling measures, etc., etc., and all of which makes developers cautious. There were about 12,105 units launched, while in 2020, there were about 11,927 units launched, and in 2019, there were a total of about 12,165 units launched for both private properties and executive condos, for your reference. So we can also see a number of resale private property transactions increasing since COVID-19 hits. So do you think that the demand is still strong?
Number two, macro uptrend.
So inflation aside, Singapore is a very small island, and fun fact, it takes about 50 Singapores to be the size of a Taiwan and 170 Singapores to be as big as New York State. However, the current population in Taiwan is about 23 million people, give or take, while New York State has about 80 million people, which makes Taiwan's population density a total of 673 people per square kilometer, while New York State's population density is at about 159 people per square kilometer. So on the other hand, Singapore is projected to have a population of 5.82 million people by the end of this year, which makes our population density 8,311 people per square kilometer. So that's 12 times more dense than Taiwan and 52 times more dense than New York State, which means that our land is scarce and rare and expensive, hence demands for housing will always be around for the next few years to come. And besides, land prices have only ever been going upwards. And knowing that developers are business people, and yet they still took the calculated risk to make land bids, knowing that, do you think that your property prices are able to crash to pre-2000 values or lower? I'll say hardly, because the richest don't want their assets to devalue either, and hence property prices in Singapore, except for HDB of course, will always be on a macro uptrend, unlike the bank interest rates.
So many local banks have predicted that the interest rates are slated to skyrocket next year. If you haven't watched the videos where I explain about the rising interest rates, click here to watch it now, and then you can come back to this video later. So if let's say the interest rates increase next year while the prices remain high, don't you think you'll be paying more if you don't take action now?
Society of Homes.